If you had to make a list of the most famous tracks in the United States, you'll come up with names like Road America, Watkins Glen, Sebring, and Laguna Seca. These are the North American destinations for sports car racing and track day racers. They have been for decades. But there's some tracks in some more unassuming places, like the middle of rural Ohio, where we may not label them as the biggest, fastest, or newest, but we can label them as a staple in American racing. One of those places is in Lexington, Ohio, Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. For round number 4, the SPEC MX-5 SimRacing Challenge, drivers in iRacing will contend for victory near the halfway point of the season. Mid-season, Mid-Ohio, but maximum action. Kyle Heyer alongside Tom O'Gorman tonight for the 4th round of the 2021 SPEC MX-5 SimRacing Challenge. Tom, this is your home track. Grew up in Cincinnati. This is not too far of a drive for you. So it may be a special place in your heart, but for a lot of drivers tonight, they're going to see this as a goal to tackle, and they're not going to have any special feelings about it after unless they win.
That's for sure. Totally right. I grew up hanging off the fence down at the S's at Mid-Ohio. That's where I fell in love with motorsports, and anytime we come to Mid-Ohio in the real world or in the simulator, I'm just thrilled to be there. So it does feel like home. Excited to come halfway for the SPEC MX-5 season this year here at Mid-Ohio, and we're deep into qualifying already. Things are always interesting here at Mid-Ohio. Lots of different aspects to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of our keys to the race a little bit later, but the track here, Tom, it's 13 corners, and they're pretty beautiful, in fact. It's all going to start with a run down to turn number 1, that fast left-hander, and the run down to the keyhole uphill.
Almost unchanged from when it was originally paved, but the fast left-hander under the bridge, very blind on entry and fast up the run towards that keyhole. A very hot, big climb up towards that keyhole, actually skipping the club chicane into the pro course. Then it's downhill through the longest straightaway, the kink at turn 3 into the S's. Turn 4 up over the hill at turn 5, that's called Madness. Down at turn 6, under the Honda Bridge at turn 7, and then into Thunder Valley. Really challenging double right-hander at 8-9 over a crest. Thunder Valley, everything thunders through there, and then turn 10 and 11. Interestingly, turns 1 and 11 have almost the exact same minimum speed. 11's fast. And then finally the carousel at turns 12 and 13 onto the front straightaway. Here tonight, we're starting on the back straight, but the checkered flag flies on that front straightaway right after turn 13.
Yeah, secondary starting box up on the back straightaway near turn number 3. We'll head down to the racetrack now for qualifying, and we'll set the grid for the first of our 2 races here tonight, Tom. 2 twin 20-minute races with race 2 set by the race 1 finishing order. So we got to get qualified to set the grid for the first time out. Our current points leader, Nathan Saxon, currently sits 2nd on the board, a 10th behind Nick Delcampo, who won a race earlier this season.
And Saxon was quickest in practice. Everyone was saying he's just got something figured out this week, but right now he does sit 2nd place to Nick Delcampo, who's just set a blisteringly fast, actually 0.3 faster than anybody went in practice. I'm curious if he may have even had some draft help, but there is your championship leader, Nathan Saxon. He has been the epitome of consistency. And you said tonight we're racing 2 20-minute races. We've raced 2 on every single race around so far. And he's pretty much the only driver, with the exception of Ryan Maloney, who has not slipped up much. But on every single event, Ryan Maloney has finished behind Nathan Saxon. So Saxon has a pretty comfortable lead coming into this round over Maloney. Hawken, who sits 3rd on the grid right now, he is 3rd in the championship as well. So those are the top 3 to keep an eye out for.
And you'll notice the white livery on Brandon Hawkins' car. The white signifies that he's a rookie to the series, and he has made a splash. There's a lot of drivers that have been here for multiple seasons. This is the 3rd year that we've done this. The black cars are the drivers that were here last season and prior. The white drivers are the new ones, and Brandon Hawken is making a huge splash. He's been very, very competitive, winning races, and honestly a huge championship threat to guys like Nathan Saxon, who finally see the opportunity to go out there and start winning races. Now that we've had some of our really heavy hitters out, Alessandrini and Hausil, who won the previous 2 seasons, but making a splash is hard, and Hawken's doing a great job.
It really is, and actually interesting to see the Saxon's car is the gray base livery, which means he didn't even finish either half the events or finish in the top 20 of points. So a couple of maybe surprises, less experienced drivers, whatever you want to call it, are kind of our front runners. And the front runner of the cars that are black right now are probably Paul Darling, and I'm trying to remember if Maloney is actually a is a black livery. No, he's not. He's a rookie as well. So it's kind of the rookies leading the way here in this championship this season.
Yeah, Ryan Maloney, you mentioned second in the point standings here in that number 65 as he works through turns 5 and 6 here under the Honda Bridge. Maloney has been impressive, but I don't think we've seen him be able to kind of break that barrier into winning races just yet. I still think Saxon, Hawken, and Del Campo are the favorites. But there's one driver that we haven't mentioned a whole lot yet today. That's Paul Darling. And is he even on this list today? I don't see him.
He is, yes. He was second quickest to practice. Didn't get a lot of practice time coming into this week, but he's, I think, our front runner for experienced drivers. Actually, Christopher Henn is our highest scoring black liveried car, but those two sit 5th and 6th in the championship. And both of them have just kind of had rough goes of it. But there is part of this championship that we haven't talked much about yet. And as we're midway of the point, I think midway of the championship, it's worth bringing up that the drivers get to drop 2-point rounds for the final score of points. Meaning if you have 2 bad races, you get to get rid of those, and we recalculate the points. Paul Darling has pretty much used 2 of those up as he has 2 DNFs. Christopher Henn has 1 DNF and 1 poor finish. So things are going to get a lot closer once you start to factor those drops in.
In 2 weeks, we head to Sebring, then Road Atlanta, Watkins, Glen, Laguna, Seca, and Circuit of the Americas to finish out the season towards the end of May. So the end is coming up pretty quick. We're already halfway through the season, as you mentioned, and with that, the points picture is going to get closer and closer. As we come into the night, the gap from Nathan Saxon back to Maloney is 9 points. That's actually a fairly sizable lead, but Saxon's just been crushing it the last couple of rounds. Do you think he's going to falter in the second half of the season? Is this too high and too early to maybe to be this hot?
He seems pretty cool as a cucumber on track. The only thing that I think back to is last week at Sonoma, he had a mirror of, I think, Brandon Hawken, and Hawken let him get very comfortable and then attacked pretty late into the first race and then really went aggressive in the second race. And I think Saxon, with being so comfortable early on in that race, wasn't expecting people to race him nearly as hard, ended up losing that race to Hawken. Hawken picked up his first win of the season, or a second win of the season that race. So that's the first chink in the armor I've seen for Saxon really show that he can get rattled. But if you just look at the points, he's not finished lower than 4th the entire season. That's super impressive.
Yeah, that's if your worst day is a 4th, you're doing pretty good. So Nathan Saxon's crushing it right now. Going to do a shout out here to the partners and sponsors that are making this season possible. A huge thanks to Level Up Racing School, helping provide the season end prizes for the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. Let's remind the audience that this is not just for bragging rights. The driver that wins this championship will get the opportunity to test one of these cars in the real world. And if they have a racing license, they will be able to also race that car, which is a huge, immense prize to win this sim racing competition. So a huge thanks to Level Up Racing School for providing that. Penguin RC Simulation race prizes. They are a sim racing hardware provider. If you check out their website, all sorts of cool stuff. Magnetic paddle shifters, iFlag units, all sorts of stuff to nerd out on. I could spend hours going through that page of stuff. And the SCDA, founded in 1995, the Sports Car Driving Association provides the driving enthusiast the opportunity to experience high-performance driving in a safe and controlled environment. SCDA events are non-competitive and driver educational with a focus on safety and fun. SCDA welcomes you and everyone from novices with no track experience and seasoned drivers and racers. We invite you to explore them at www.scda1.com to learn more. So 4 minutes left here in qualifying. Nothing's changed up at the front. Chris Henn jumps into 6th. We've sort of established our front runners, although I think this is the most equal front runner group we've ever had here in SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. In the past, we had DJ Alessandrini. He won the first season of this pretty much in a dominant fashion. Ken Halseal kind of snuck in at the end last year to steal it away, but was always there and consistent. This year, anybody in the top 8 or 9, I think, could win this championship, given the way that things have been shuffling around so far in that top 5.
Agreed, and I should go back, actually misspoke. Our pole sitter, current provisional pole sitter, Nick Del Campo, is the highest scoring black liveried car. So that 15 car, he was quiet for me. I apologize for overlooking. He sits 4th in the championship right now with a pretty forgettable opening round at Road America, but has been really solid ever since. And his pace right now in this qualifying session is impressive, to say the least. He's pulling over to maybe reset one more go with 3.5 minutes or so on the board, but that 38.1, that's a little faster than I think anybody really expected someone to go with, as warm as the track is tonight.
I want to ride on board here with Brendan Hawken through this this section here, turns 4 through 6. A lot of elevation here, Tom, and it's a blind crest over the crest here in 5. Big jump over the curb here. You come up over this crest, and then you set yourself up for a right-hander right after. So this is really interesting to watch drivers take all sorts of different lines through here.
It is, and road courses typically don't have sequences of corners this long, but turns 4, 5, 6. Now under the Honda Bridge at turn 7, completely blind up through turn 8, which is the braking zone for turn 9, and then the blind crest exiting turn 9 into the Thunder Valley section. That is a huge sequence of corners, which is not only very difficult to pass in, but very difficult to link together. So I think that's one of the unique challenges that Mid-Ohio has to it. It's kind of considered a major driver's track because you have to be able to link those corners together without losing any momentum, and the line choices in a number of those places are not particularly obvious. So that's one of the coolest features of Mid-Ohio Sports Car course for me.
And you mentioned line choices. Well, it's important which line you pick because you're probably going to have to follow people through significant portions of this racetrack. One of our keys to the race, which we'll go over here in a few minutes, is single file. You're going to spend a lot of the time around this racetrack line astern with each other. There's 2 obvious passing opportunities that I see around here. That's heading into the keyhole and the resultant of the keyhole. That's the other end, turn 4 into turn 5. Those are really the 2 passing opportunities that I see here, Tom. Is there anywhere else you can make things happen?
Well, you can by rattling someone's cage, I think, and we saw that work for Brandon Hawken last week at Sonoma when he really went on the attack for Nathan Saxon and picked up the lead after going around the outside of a bunch of corners that no one would have said you could go around the outside. But you can certainly get someone offline going down into China Beach and maybe complete the pass here after the Honda Bridge. You may end up side by side through this section. You can also get a run on someone through Thunder Valley and kind of put them offline for 11 and then the carousel right here. But aside from those 2 obvious passing zones, which are braking zones, it's going to take a number of corners, up to a half a dozen corners to complete a pass if you get somebody out of line here.
And the other thing I think we should mention is this entrance to the keyhole. My experience here in iRacing is this corner is really challenging. I got a ride around here last year, following you actually, into this corner. This is a really deceiving entry. You kind of come up over that blind crest through turn number 11 and then into this final complex. And you're braking and having to also turn the car at the same time. Now, these MX-5s don't mind kind of changing direction, but this is a challenging corner. If you mess up the entrance to this, you could drive off drivers left, you could drive off drivers right, you could just overshoot and drive straight into a tire barrier. A lot of ways to get that corner wrong, and it's pretty crucial because it leads into the fastest section on the track, the front straightaway all the way to the keyhole.
It is, and I think that's the other reason this is really a driver's track is the margin for error is very small here, and this is one of those classic American road courses that hasn't been neutered with a bunch of runoff. And as you go back to that entry of the carousel, if we even hop on board with Ismael Basso, who's qualified down in the middle of the pack but has been up towards the front, you'll see him coming through turn 11. And there's a couple of ways you can even manipulate qualifying here. Look at how short the entry is here. You can set up really, really wide and get a good run onto the front straightaway onto your flyer and then cut all the distance out of the entry for the carousel on your actual flyer. Yes, it ruins your run onto the next lap, but you can really play with this track in ways that most road courses can't be manipulated.
Really fun corner, fun complex for sure. Then this fast turn 1. I remember last year when I was here for a club racing event, people would just dare to go in there without even touching the brakes, just throw the car in, jump the curb, and that is a lot of fun, that turn 1 under the bridge there as well. That's also a blind entry and another challenge to deal with over the course of these 2 20-minute races. Time to bring us down to the grid here and get us rolling for SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge round number 4 from Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. And Tom, let's roll through our starting grid on the left-hand side of the screen. It's going to start with Nick Del Campo on that front row alongside Nathan Saxon in the number 16.
And Brandon Hawken will line up on the inside of row 2 alongside Chris Taylor, who leapt up into 4th late in that session.
In row number 3, it'll be Ryan Maloney in the number 65. Steve Ficacci in the 51. Great starting spot for him. Rolls off in 6th.
Then it's Chris Henn, the postman, in 7th alongside Jordan Bachmeyer. His 31 car starts 8th.
In 9th place, Paul Darling in the number 55, looking for some better luck to go with his immense pace. Then Carter Kundinger starts in 10th. He made a lot of his own luck at Sonoma. He'll try to do the same here from 10th.
Then it'll be Mitchell Peak on the 11th position in his 56 car alongside Greg Profeta in 12th in the 29.
Thomas Bressi rolls off 13th in that green number 24. Mark Palunin to the outside in the gray and blue number 38 and 14th.
Riley Thompson and Ismael Basso start alongside each other in the 8th row, 15th and 16th.
In 17th and 18th, Jack Sanchez and Gustavo Porgato in row number 9.
And Kevin Zhu in the 43. He will start 19th alongside Elijah Croft. His 17 car starts 20th.
Brian Chabelski starts 21st alongside Alan Jensen in 22nd in the number 45.
And it's George Fike, 23rd, alongside Matthew Cridland in 24th.
Renault Roland Hubert in the number 19 starts 25th. Brian Sohn, the Penguin RC Simulation 03, starts in 26th.
Max Bauman in the 27th spot, and Scott McIntyre in the 28th spot will be there in that 14th row.
Then in row number 15, Benson Tai in the number 96. Scott Angelo starts in 30th in the number 68. Looks like Thor Tullo is the only driver not to have gridded just yet. We'll see if he gets on grid. That would be our 31st and final starter for race number 1 of round 4 of the 2021 SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. Let's go over our keys to the race here, Tom. Single file, we alluded to it earlier. It's a challenge to pass here. There are places to pass and places to run in line, and for about half the track, you're following other people.
Yep, with all those transitions, it can be very difficult to get out of line, but we're halfway through this championship, round 4 of 8, and consistency is going to be absolutely critical. If you've used up some of those drops, you got to be picture perfect from now on.
And sight lines, alluding back to the single file, you're following people here, Tom. These MX-5s are pretty low to the ground, hard to see over crests, hard to see through other cars. Got to make sure you can see where you're going and don't make a misstep.
And with those longer straightaways, it's not like Sonoma where things will get spread out. Things will stay pretty compact in the field here today, so you almost have to have a spidey sense with who's around you and where your marks are so that you can hit those braking zones and apexes without maybe even being able to see them.
All right, we will not be starting this race on the normal front straightaway. We're going to be starting this race on the back straightaway where most races are begun here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. So the clock is ticking. There is now 19 minutes and 45 seconds remaining, but the race will not go green until we get to that backstretch flag stand here, Tom. So we'll rack them up, stack them up. Del Campo in the black and blue number 15. He's won a race so far this season. Is track position the name of the game tonight? Do you like starting up front, staying up front, or do you like trying to rally from the back?
Well, these guys have to get a little bit of a feel for how big the draft is down that back straightaway, which is where they're receiving the green flag. But I think other than shuffling on the start, you got to take your positions where you can get them. Once the thing settles into a bit of a rhythm, it's not uncommon to see last lap patience and moves all the way into that final braking zone at turn 4 to try to pick up a position on the last lap.
All right, so lining up now side by side, double file, SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge, round number 4 from Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, the halfway point in the season. Sebring in 2 weeks to continue from sunny Florida. Flag stand on the left here in just a moment. Going to get the green flag from race control. And we are racing in SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge, round number 4. Nick Del Campo leads him to the green. 4 wide in the backdrop, but up front, just double wide for Hawken and Saxon in turns 4 and 5. So far, so good. Don't end up in the gravel trap here, though, Tom. Be very careful on this opening last.
So far, so good. Del Campo with a little bit of a breakaway side by side for Hawken and Saxon. They need to sort this thing out before they lose Del Campo, and finally they do. Hawken through to second place from 3rd on the grid. Chris Taylor maintains 4th, and Maloney in 5th. Not a lot of shuffling back there so far, but Hawken, that's a really important position to pick up over the championship leader.
I get the sense that right now your goal is to fall in line single file. Don't make any crazy moves. You don't want to get yourself in a pickle here early. There's a lot of opportunity to shuffle yourself off. So a little bit of side by side. Here's Carter Kundinger on the 92 on the outside of Jordan Bachmeyer. The 31 makes that pass complete into turn 11.
Great to see it. Such a late green flag, a little bit of a more casual pounding down into China Beach at turn 4 to start this race off. And everybody is through to technically complete lap number 1. With absolutely no incident or contact. We'll knock on wood that keeps going, but look at the draft already, bringing Hawken and Saxon and the rest of the field back up to Del Campo, and this is where that sightlines point comes in. Everybody driving on spidey senses now. You got to know where to brake, you got to know where the corner is without being able to see it, and the only guy who's got clear windshield is Del Campo there in P1.
Yeah, following in Nathan Saxon, you can get a pretty good look at, these cars are big in the windshield. You're sitting pretty low, and they're already pretty low to the ground, so there's not a lot to see out the nose. I liken this almost to like restrictor plate racing in NASCAR. You just can't see a lot. You're driving on instinct. And if you put a wheel wrong, especially in the braking zone here, you see this a lot into turn 4. If you're out too far, drivers left, get a wheel in the grass, it's game over. You're going off.
It is. Trying to pay close attention here to how big the draft might be. It doesn't look like it was as big as I thought. Hawken needs to be a lot closer than that, but we have side-by-side action deep into China Beach now, a little bit further back in the pack.
It's Alex Jensen on Elijah Kloft in the number 17. That pass is complete. George Fike in the 09 settling in behind. Brian Chabelski, Renault Roland Hubert, and more. And already seeing the single file situation start to come up here. The passing into turn 2 and into turn 4, that's where we're going to see most of it. and then it's riding the train for the rest of the lap.
It really is, and what we tend to see with any sort of race like this, drafting, SPEC Miata racing, SPEC MX-5 racing, MX-5 Cup, no matter what it is, when it comes to Mid-Ohio, things stay really tight and compact like this, and at some point in the next 18 or so, 16 or so minutes, someone's going to throw a grenade on that battle, and then things get really interesting for a lap or so as everybody tries to get back to single file. But you got to be really calculated with when you pull the pin on that grenade, because if you do it too early, you might lose your shot.
Del Campo leads across the line. 16 minutes to go through turn number 1. Sticks to that inside yellow curb, and that's another thing to keep an eye on here. The curbing is really smooth and flat around here. You can use a lot of it, but there's not a lot of corners where it really gains you a lot of advantage. Maybe turn 4 and turn 5, Tom, but for the most part, probably want to keep the tires on the black stuff here today.
Yeah, coming into Thunder Valley as well is a really helpful place to have that tiny bit of yellow curbing, but this is a kind of old curbing, and whoa, there's a trouble for Saxon's going to lose some time. Chris Taylor might get a little bit of a run from 4th and pick that fight. But you can see just how hard it is to see. You know, he committed the throttle. He thought he was in one spot, and he wasn't, and went off.
Oh, and a bit of a defensive maneuver there for Nathan Saxon. Feels the pressure from Chris Taylor. Late on the brakes. ABS vibrating underfoot into turn 4. But he hangs onto the spot, and you see the battle for the lead heating up now. Hawking all over Nick Del Campo through madness here.
It's really interesting to consider the championship implications for each driver under that helmet. The car that needs to be careful is in 3rd place. The cars that really want to send it in there all the time, pick up every position they can, are surrounding Nathan Saxon.
George Fike off in turn number 5 by the looks of it. Let's go back and see how he found himself in this particular spot. And I think he's going to go off at the exit here. Through madness okay so far, then comes up over the crest. And probably tracks out a little bit too wide, gets on the grass right there. Big slide and slowed it all the way down.
Good save, though, and not collecting anybody else up as well. It looks like he was pitching that car around pretty heavily. Even still, big rotation for that car, and now a stack up.
That's a stack up for sure. We got a whole lot of bent up Miatas, and that was behind. Actually, Paul Darling got some pretty major damage in that as well here, Tom. They really got into a roadblock situation here. Let's go look from high above and see where it starts. The 92 of Carter Kundinger gets loose, gets into the back of the 31. That's where it all starts to stack up. And then just running in, and again, can't see where to go, can't go anywhere really, and just pile in and make a dent.
Yeah, that's tough because that section of track is still very single file, but you do open the door up by maybe a car width, and then all of a sudden you get this stack up. Here's the grenade we were talking about, still pounding off of each other. Darling is around the outside. This is bad for his championship. The rest of the cars that didn't get damage are trying to pull up ahead. But Jordan Bachmeyer is getting away a little bit as now Carter Kundinger, Thomas Bressi is through.
Look at that. Oh, there they go. There's one guy way off. That's a Polonin slams into the barrier, across the racetrack, upside down like a top. Everybody darts out of the way, but one of those cars wasn't going to come out of that, and it turned out to be Polonin. And Paul Darling dropping down to 11th here. This is chaos over the crest of madness.
And that's what happens as soon as someone picks a fight. You're side by side forever. The first 3 cars finally getting it back together. That was a little bit reminiscent of Joey Hand's incident back in the IMSA days, but these drivers still now finally looking like they're agreeing to get single file. Heavy damage on the front of Paul Darling's car, heavy damage on the rear of Mitchell Peak's car just behind, but now still a little bit of battling as the 45 trying to pick up more positions.
43 car, Kevin Zhu hanging on the left rear quarter of Jack Sanchez. That will get him alongside here into turn 11. Bit of a pinch point here. Hard to hold that flat on the outside, but looks like he's done it and will hang on there. Still some double file back here. The 17 of Kloft going the wrong direction. 19 up the middle, that's Hubert. Wow, that was a frantic couple laps. We've got it sorted out for now. Up front, though, no changes. Nick Del Campo, though, still feeling pressure from Hawkins. It's a 3-car breakaway up at the front.
There's 3 more cars kind of sniffing on that battle as well, but that whole incident has led our top 6 to really be in a league of their own. We do have some notes from race control, a number of incidents under review. Obviously, we saw all of those unfold, so we'll keep you posted on those, but now this is a 6-horse race, maybe 7. Yeah, there's a 7th car clicking onto the back there. 2 off onto the back straightaway, but Del Campo seems to have a pretty good control on this one. Now, this is a bit reminiscent of race 1 from Sonoma last week, Kylo. We know how that went.
Yeah, Sonoma was an interesting race because I think we went in there knowing it was going to be really hard to pass, and I think the same thing is sort of true here at Mid-Ohio. We raced this very racetrack a couple seasons ago, but with the club chicane entering the keyhole, and that race was really about track position, and if you didn't start up front, you had no chance of moving forward, and already starting to see that here. So Del Campo might be shaping up for a 2-win night if he can just stay up front and not give up any spots. There's Jack Sanchez in trouble. And I think there was one other car involved with that as well. That's over in China Beach. That's what they call the gravel trap over in turn number 4. And here's a look at Sanchez in the green car.
Looks very self-induced. Oh, no, he got help from Ismael Basso, got tank slapper. I think they were door-to-door with maybe Paul Darling. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Paul Darling in the 55. The 29 car of Greg Profeta is also in there. Dives up into Paul Darling, hits the door. It was pretty much on Basso there, Tom. Just got in too hot, lost the back end. And then Sanchez just went along for the ride.
It's unfortunate for Sanchez as he was an innocent bystander, but I agree, that one on the 40. Paul Darling is calling this one, doesn't want to race this damaged race car anymore, is going in for a bit of body work. And we mentioned it earlier on, he's used 2 of those drops already. He's basically got 2 DNFs. This will essentially be a 3rd, which means his championship hopes just got infinitely more difficult.
For the lead, Hawken on the outside of Del Campo, trying to wrestle that lead away through the keyhole. Saxon takes the opportunity to go up the inside. He wants 2nd place. Door open, I'm going to barge through it, says Saxon.
But now, with a run around the outside, Hawken, with a bit of momentum, he had a draft from Del Campo, but Del Campo changes lanes, gives the draft back to Saxon. No, comes back across the nose of Hawken. They're going to go side by side into China Beach. Turn 4, Saxon with the preferred line on entry, but check this out, becomes the outside for turn 5.
Love how the sequence of corners makes drivers think about where they want to place the car, but door to door, they're going to give up time here to Del Campo if they can't sort this out. They almost didn't get this sorted out on lap 1 here, Tom, but look at them hemorrhaging time now. It looks like Del Campo gained a half a second in 2 corners with that happening behind him.
He did, and that was really smart manipulation. He changed lanes a couple of times down the back straightaway to keep those 2 cars side by side because he wanted them to be fighting like this, and they are. Unfortunately, it's not really late enough in the race for this to benefit Del Campo, but he's going to get a bit of a break for probably a lap and a half or so. Hawken picks the position back up finally around the outside. Let's call him Mr. Outside. He somehow finds grip, but where everybody else can't. Saxon still in 3rd. Maloney couldn't figure out where to go with it.
Yeah, just kind of sitting on it, waiting for them to make a mistake and go on through. Chris Taylor in the 53 having a really good day. Chris Henn in the 33 has had an average day, but he's in the fight, in the hunt, and we've seen things get messy at the front before. Think back to Road America. In our first round, we had a last lap crash where he could pick up a whole bunch of spots. So Chris Henn is waiting in the wings for that to happen. Almost a cone goes flying there at the exit of turn number 1, and it's a long ways back to find Jordan Bachmeier in the 31 car in the purple and white in the way background. Still some shuffling happening pretty deep in the field here. But Brian Sohn and Roland Hubert fighting for 23rd. But Del Campo is almost a full second up on the field, and if he can have a good couple sectors here, Tom, lights out and away he goes.
I don't know that he's far enough away to really pull off, but he does get a little mid-race breather as those drivers are going to probably inevitably pull back up to the back bumper of the 15 car. But I agree, he's really controlling this race well. Hawken was in a little deep, drops a tire. This is what Del Campo wanted to see. Does Saxon go for it again? He's going to fill the mirror on the right side, but thinks second of it.
Yeah, it's so hard to run side by side through there and just not lose gobs of time. So I think he realized right there, you just stand on the brakes a little bit longer, tuck back in line. We're losing ground here, yes, and I think at some point he's going to have to force the issue. But do you think Saxon's faster than Hawken or Del Campo, or do you think it's just a matter of the frantic driving that Hawken's doing in defense?
It's hard to say because the draft is influencing that as well. Remember last week at Sonoma, we didn't really have that storyline at all, and that's uncommon for MX-5s. Now we're back to status quo where the back straightaway is going to bring cars together naturally, and I think Saxon is just benefiting from that more than anything. I don't know that he's actually quicker, but what's interesting is Del Campo has now pulled out over a second, and that's pretty much free of the draft for the rest of the field. I think the 15 car might actually have pulled off a little bit of a checkout here.
And if he could do that, he would start on pole for race number 2, and he could try to do the same thing again. Here comes Saxon trying the same thing Hawken tried on the race leader a few laps ago, but not far enough alongside, at least not as far as the 99 was. And the keyhole is another one of those corners. You can drive 47 different lines through there, especially when it's wet. I would love to race this in the rain here in iRacing someday, but it's such an interesting corner because the dynamics of it, with the track falling away from you, and it's longer than you think it is. A lot of things you can try there.
And Saxon with the over-under, somehow Hawken is going all the way to the outside of the track, and he's trying to just get back in line before Maloney picks up the spot, but Maloney gets overlap as well. Saxon through to second place. Maloney shows the nose, and exactly what you were talking about. Hawken goes too wide on entry.
And almost loses control, but he tucks back in line. Oh, Henn gets turned off the nose of Chris Taylor, does a 360, gets back rolling. He'll lose a spot. and some pride, but he got helped around there just a little bit. Back up to the battle here. Del Campo pulling away, loving this. I think Hawken ran wide on purpose to give up the least amount of time. He saw Del Campo driving away, realized maybe I'm not the guy to be leading this train. Smart move there, but do you think it's too late?
Well, Saxon already had the run on Hawken, and Hawken just wanted to make sure he didn't lose too many positions. So I think he really wanted to slot in between Saxon in the purple and gray and Maloney in the white and burgundy car, but Hawken didn't quite time it right, and now is sitting in 4th position. Championship leader up to 2nd place with all that shuffling. Now it's 2 seconds lead almost for Del Campo. He's gone, but again, Saxon, I don't know that he was necessarily the quickest car, but he wanted it the most, and he got it.
I think at this point in the season, Nathan Saxon can shift his focus away from going out there and just flat out winning races and maximizing points days and start to look at, hey, do I need to really push the issue here? Do I need to go run down Nick Del Campo? Probably not, because the driver I'm fighting, at least right now, the championship, is Brandon Hawken. As long as I finish in front of him, I'm good. But is that short-sighted, and can that get you in a tricky spot later down the line?
No, that's the best way to think of it. I know from personal experience, the year that I approached a championship with a championship mentality and not caring about each single position, but considering the bigger picture at all times, it paid off both times. And someone who can think like that and set aside their pride a little bit and not go for every single win all the time at the expense of maybe making mistakes here and there, they're the drivers that are the most successful. So now you see Saxon, now that he's leading this thing, he's not the fastest car. He didn't drive away. Maloney is now filling his mirrors the same as he was doing to Hawken, but he gets the luxury of choosing whether he wants to fight for it as badly or maybe he lets Maloney go through, because you're right, the car that is closest to him in the championship is now 2 cars back, not just 1.
Yeah, I heard Maloney have a kind of a messy downshift here. And let's remind everybody, these are H-pattern manual transmission cars. You have to heel toe the downshifts, and it sounded like Maloney got it just a little bit wrong. And they're pretty challenging at times to get right. So that's another thing we should keep an eye on, is if Ryan Maloney keeps having those shifting issues, especially if you rev match incorrectly, you can really chirp the rear tires and have yourself a bad time, especially in some of these slower corners. Let's look back a little bit here in the field. Here's Kevin Zhu on Carter Kundinger. This is for 11th. Look at the damage to the back of Carter Kundinger's car. He's had a Kundinger in the back of that Miata, that's for sure.
That was from the incident where he got tangled with Jordan Bachmeier, and Bachmeier has gotten through with mildly less damage, but still a pretty heavily damaged number 31 a couple of cars up the road. Zhu is through, up the inside of turn 1, throws it in there. Such a fun corner.
It is a fun corner. They got that big old curb on the inside you can kind of leap up onto to help rotate the car around. And then on the back straightaway here, heading up to the keyhole, Kundinger in the slipstream. Dives on the brakes a little early. Love how these cars, you can see them slam the nose down on the softer suspension onto the nose. And keeping an eye on up front, we only have 4 laps to go, but let's just have a look here at the lap times. Last time by, Nathan Saxon, a 139.2 to a 139.217. 17 thousandths faster, but that's not going to do it, especially with a challenge from Maloney up the inside of turn 5. He's going to stick it down there. Yes, he does.
Wow, really forces the issue around the outside at 4, and now picks up the inside for 5, outside for 6. This is going to be tough to hold on to. He does. He keeps a nose there, and now pinches off the exit for Saxon. They're going to go side by side under the Honda bridge, and this is really solidifying Del Campo's top spot, but these two need to sort it out pretty quickly. Saxon with the inside. This is how Hawken picked up the position. Around the outside, they're still door handle to door handle.
Yeah, this is conceding that Nick Del Campo has won this race. This is essentially what they're doing. They said, all right, to heck with Nick, we can't catch him, but here we're going to battle for second because that's points on the line, and we want those points. Hawken wants back into the fight. Chris Taylor sees a hole. He's going to dive up the inside. That's for 4th.
I was worried early on that we wouldn't be able to get these battles because the draft wasn't strong enough. That is not the case. Maloney picks up the draft down the back straightaway and ultimately finds the spot. Remember, we talked about it might take it half a dozen corners to do it, but he got there. Now it's Saxon in 3rd, Hawken in 4th.
Just a dab on the brakes, and you just throw the car in there. That's so fun to watch. And then now he's carrying that momentum here, but it looks like Maloney might be the fastest of this group. We'll see if Saxon can bring that fight back to him.
This would be a fantastic result for his championship, but I'm not going to put money on any of these cars, let alone Chris Taylor and Steve Ficacci, who are still in there. Taylor, sorry, go ahead.
Maloney opened the door there, and Saxon said, I'm going to just jump right in. Late in the corner, too, and I was worried that Maloney was going to chop across at the apex, but he left room, and they got out okay.
I think he was in a little deep. I was just saying Chris Taylor in the background with the neon yellow, and then Ficacci with the gray, but look at the draft. Saxon to the inside. Do you want the inside or the outside? I almost think the outside has paid off more for people.
It seems like it. This turn 4, you can jump that curb, but then it sets you up for a bad entry through turn 5. I think turn 5 is the more important corner, but if you can maintain drivers right through turn 5, then you got you've got a couple right-handers and you're good to go, but maintaining that spot is really, really challenging. 3 laps to go for the race leader, coming to 2 to go. And now it's a 3-second gap from Maloney up to Del Campo. So they're not going to run him down unless he makes a mistake, which he has not shown any signs of doing so far. But the second place battle is a pretty spicy one. And Saxon and Maloney are going to probably lean on each other a few more times here this next lap.
Look at how enticing it might be to shove your nose up the inside. You got to stay glued to the grass there, but there is that half a car width, sometimes a full car width that opens on the entry to the carousel, and you got to be careful not to get too big for your britches going in there. That's what happened in the mid-pack a little earlier on. Saxon is looking really, really racy, but I'm interested to see, because Maloney timed that early, he had 3.5 laps to go when he started his pass. Maybe he's actually given Nathan Saxon the best position on the track.
We have 1 minute left in this race. I wonder if this will be the white flag lap. As we came through turn 2, we have 55 seconds to go. So this could be our final lap of the race. And these drivers will know. Sometimes the timing and scoring gets a little bit wrong, but the drivers will know for sure if it's white flag. And Nathan Saxon is looking really racy. I think he's feeling the pressure of only having a lap, potentially 2 left.
Not the best run out of the keyhole. He had a little bit of pressure from Brandon Hawken on the way in, and I think it compromised his exit. But there's the draft starting to do its work. He pokes early, interestingly. Oh, he's actually protecting from Hawken. Hawken tries the outside around Saxon.
I like that, though, because if Hawken can stay there, he'll have the position through turn 5, but he hasn't been good on driver's left through that corner. Now he's going to try to jam it up the inside deep, and Chris Taylor watching from behind, seeing a hole open to the left, to the right of Hawken. He's going to go down the inside into turn 6. This will be, by the way, coming to the checkers. White flag will be out this time by. Well, actually, last time by. So Del Campo's coming back to the checkers. Everyone else scrapping for position here. Maloney's got it. Saxon wants it. I think it's all but over at this point unless Saxon gets really creative and Maloney gets really sloppy.
Yeah, it needed to happen back into the S's on that that final approach, but Del Campo checked out almost 4 seconds now with all the other bickering that they've been doing. The final approach into the carousel, Maloney nails it.
Not much you can do. Maloney nailed it that time. Coming back to the checkers, Nick Del Campo wins his 2nd race of the season. Ryan Maloney side by side with Saxon, but it's Maloney, Saxon the rest of the podium, then Hawken and Taylor 4th and 5th. Then it'll be Steve Ficacci 6th, Chris Henn in 7th. Here he comes across the line. Other battling throughout the field. Here's George Fike, Matthew Cridlin for 17th. And race number 1 is complete here for SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge, round number 4. We're going to take these finishing positions, grid them up this exact same way, and do a second race, another 13-lapper here in a couple minutes. So don't go anywhere, Tom. But race 1, interesting for second, but Del Campo just drove away. He might be able to do it a second time.
Well, he was given that gift by the rest of the field, in my opinion, and we don't often get to nail the keys to the race quite as much as we did, but that was a very, very Mid-Ohio looking race, and we're in for another one. Very exciting side-by-side action for second place on back, but Del Campo 3.6 seconds victory after battling for second place, started behind him. And it was Ryan Maloney that came over top of Nathan Saxon. This is only the 2nd time this whole season that Ryan Maloney has scored more points in a race than Nathan Saxon. It's starting to tip his way a little bit, I think.
So a short warm-up period here to kind of debrief and go over what we saw before we get into race number 2. Let's go back to our keys to the race from the beginning of the race and see how accurate we were. Single file seemed to be pretty dead on. Halfway there, we're also halfway through the night, so that's something to consider. And sight lines, being able to see, that's what caused that stack up in the carousel here, Tom. I think we nailed those. What did we learn, though? What did drivers in second and beyond learn? And what did Nick Del Campo maybe take away to do what he did the first time and just drive away without having to defend?
Well, he needs to carbon copy that one. He needs to get as strong a start as he did and deliver as strong a performance as he did. He has no other option. But the rest of the field learned that the dynamic through turns 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 is where a lot of the racing can actually happen. And the only person that doesn't really have any experience doing that right now is Nick Del Campo. So if someone attacks him, he might not realize that perhaps the outside of turn 4 is the better place to be, or perhaps picking a certain place to place the car is a better place to be. He also doesn't necessarily have the experience with the dynamic as things ebbed and flowed through the field to know maybe if I'm only in second, it's okay, but if I'm in third, I'm in trouble, etc., etc. There's some things that he didn't get to learn because he was by himself.
So thinking about some of the places that Hawken and others were challenging, I saw Hawken try, and Saxon for that matter, try the move on driver's left into the keyhole on the outside. Do you try to maintain that outside lane there, or are you trying to set up a crossover for the back straight?
I think it's more a crossover. If you can bring the car to driver's left coming over the crest as you drop through and down to the late apex of that keyhole, it's really the faster way to drive that line, that corner in a low horsepower car like this. You can see how it falls away, but a number of drivers were able to successfully set up a faster run down the back straightaway and complete a pass, or at least complete an attack down into this S's section. I think the driver that's at the front of the line, who doesn't necessarily have the option to open up the keyhole like that, is probably in the worst position.
You're watching SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge, round number 4 from Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in Lexington, Ohio. The virtual representation of Lexington, probably a little bit warmer here today than it is in real life. And we've got Sebring coming up in 2 weeks. I'm looking ahead to the other races we've got coming up. So we've got Sebring, then Road Atlanta, Watkins, Glen, Laguna Seca, and Coda for the season finale on May 5th. Which of those racetracks coming up do you think is going to be the most competitive out of the next 5?
Well, Road Atlanta, I mean, all of them, really. The only track where we don't have a real large straightaway influencing things, which tends to be the big storyline in SPEC MX-5, is Laguna Seca. The straightaways there are fairly short. The other interesting one is Watkins Glen. Is similar to Mid-Ohio in that the greatest passing opportunity happens before even halfway through the lap. So you get the run up through the S's and into the bus stop. Maybe through the bus stop in the outer loop is a good passing opportunity, but it's similar to here at Mid-Ohio, where if you don't do it on the back straight, you're probably sealed, even though there's still half a lap to go. This
is a racetrack that you've raced at personally. You've got a Honda S2000 that you run in another club racing series. This track, again, your home track here, Tom. You've run in IMSA as well in the TCR car category. Did you run in both the Civic and the Audi, or was it just the Civic?
Just the Civic, and I did my first pro race here actually as well in a Honda Fit. So
yes, you did.
My first track day here in a Mazda Miata. So a lot of firsts here.
A lot of firsts here. Also, isn't this the race in your Fit that you pretend that didn't happen, and then you went to Laguna Seca and crushed everybody, and then you're like, that's the first one.
Yes, that one.
Oh, man.
The one we don't talk about.
Yes. So, again, Tom O'Gorman, two-time winner, or two-time champion in Pirelli World Challenge, and 4-time IMSA race winner. I'm Kyle Heyer. I'm a sim nobody, and enjoying my time here with Tom. So, checkered flag here in warm-up. We'll head down to the racetrack for our second 20-minute round, and we'll finish it off and head on to Sebring here in 2 weeks. So again, gridding how we finished on the left-hand side of the screen. Nick Del Campo and Ryan Maloney are your front row starters. I don't think we need to go through the whole grid once again, but let's take some notes out of this. Riley Thompson is 58. This is a driver that came in at the end of last season. I thought he would be mighty competitive this year. I haven't seen the pace out of him I thought I'd see. I think his strongest races will be at the tail end of the season. Maybe not a championship season for Riley, but he's young. He's got a lot of life left in him, and I think he'll try to move forward here in this race, and he might be able to grab a top 10 out of it. Also, Thomas Bresci with a top 10. Good to see him finish out in 9th in race number 1. We'll see if he can repeat in this second race.
Yeah, I was just scanning the grid because we didn't get to see the mid-pack as much with the front being so exciting. But first, Ryan Maloney picked up 3 positions. That's a great climb that high up the field. Thomas Bresci, 13th to 9th. Kevin Zhu, 19th to 11th. That's a heck of a charge for the 43 car, and I think that might be some of the experience that is indicated by that black base. Alex Jensen, 22nd to 14th. He starts there in the 14th position. And then obviously we start to get into the cars that just benefited from attrition, but a couple of drivers on a track that we say is passing is tough made it work for them.
Definitely gets progressively more difficult as you get farther forward, though. So I think for drivers like Kevin Zhu that charged forward, that's going to get even trickier as the race goes on. Again, we are starting on the back straightaway, not the front straight here. So we'll take the green on the way down to turn number 4. Nick Del Campo will again start on drivers. Oh, he was lined up drivers left before, or will he be drivers right? You're going to want drivers right heading into turn 4. Or do you? Which lane do you want, Tom?
Well, he will be on driver's right, but he closed the door. I mean, he got a little bit of a jump on the field and was able to go single file into that corner either way. So I think we'll probably see that happen again. And he was able to do the corner on line. What was interesting, though, is the rest of the field went 2 by 2 through that corner. So I don't know, maybe some of the drivers from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th will agree to single file this thing out a little bit more, unless perhaps Ryan Maloney or another driver gets a better start and challenges Del Campo into turn 1. well, 4.
Nicely done, by the way, for our steward Ryan, who has done an amazing job setting up these starts. This is not standard practice here at iRacing. Don't know why it isn't. It should be, but it's not. To set this up and make it look that nice and clean, they did a great job here. All right, race 2 of round 4, SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge here for Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Del Campo and Maloney on the front row, 28 cars deep. No Paul Darling or Mark Palunin for this race as we take the green. Nick Del Campo leads them down as we head to turn number 4. He pulls away and clears the 65 of Maloney on the run down to that first corner.
Oh, that's a poor start for Maloney. Saxon's going to clear him too, almost into the braking zone. Del Campo's already away. And yes, Saxon is able to close the door on Maloney, pick up the second place. Hawken has to check up, gets a big float, and now they're side by side for Taylor and Ficacci. Look at Ficacci charging from 7th up to 5th.
Yeah, he wants a spot now as we head into turn number 6. So, man, that was real dicey for Taylor to slot into in front of Jordan Bachmeyer. Chris Henn back to 8th. Mitchell Peak, Thomas Bressi, 9th and 10th. And again, nicely done through the first couple corners. There's George Fike in the 09. Right behind him is Greg Profeta in the 29 car. Out front, though, Del Campo is clear by 0.4 of a second. Saxon, the points leader, following him. And we'll see if he can bring that fight all the way to the pointy end this time instead of just battling for scraps.
Whoa, Del Campo almost loses the back end. Maybe missed the downshift, completely misses the carousel, and now is alongside. He's going to get the inside line through onto the front straightaway, and that actually boxed Saxon. Look at Ryan Maloney in the 65 up the inside for turn 1, thinks better of it and lifts, tucks back in. Smart move right there.
Yeah.
But that was an odd mistake from Del Campo.
Yeah, that could have been an opportunity for them to collide or even lose ground again on Del Campo. For Maloney and Saxon to sort that out tells me that they're ready to work together. What you don't want to do is repeat what just happened, because while they finished well and got good points, Del Campo finished better and got more points, and so that's not going to work out too good. Maybe a little bit of co-opetition, work together while competing, and see if you can maybe keep this 15 car in sight, because I do think he's the best car out here today.
I agree, and just looking at the championship standings, a sweep tonight for Nick Del Campo would put him on even footing with Nathan Saxon, Ryan Maloney, and Brandon Hawken once you consider drops. So that is something that the rest of the 3 really don't want to happen.
And look at Chris Taylor going defensive on Jordan Bachmeyer into turn 4. Moved over driver's right, kept that purple car in behind. Chris Henn pulls up to the rear bumper of the 31, and look how organized this train is here. And I'm sure if they could be side by side and make speed, they'd be doing it here, Tom, but the fastest way is just to follow each other until you have a better run. It's almost like they're literally attached together on rails. It's actually sort of funny looking.
It's like that snake game you used to have on your flip phone or whatever. But I bit my tongue until we completed the first lap. But typically we've seen race 2 in these nights be a little more aggressive than race 1, and it's great to see that race 2 has not changed shape at all. But Saxon almost made a liar out of me.
He almost hit that rear bumper of Nick Del Campo. Look at this run he got into turn 13. Del Campo slips. Saxon goes side by side. This time he's not lifting. Drag race at over 100 miles an hour into turn 1. Dab on the brakes, tuck it in. Try the crossover here at the exit of turn 1. Watch, you can't get below that yellow curb. That's a cut course, and Saxon couldn't build a big enough run. Here comes Maloney. He might give him a shove.
No, he broke early to make sure that he didn't get stuck on the outside and maybe let Ryan Maloney and the rest through. He doesn't want to get freight train. Now he's up the inside, but this is that outside line we were talking about. Ryan Maloney's about to get the run of a century around the high side. Hawken balked him just a little bit, but still the momentum around the high side of the carousel is not a problem. The problem is now the leaders change lanes on him. Maloney has no draft. Hawken has the draft.
Ooh, he tucks in front of Brandon Hawkins. That momentum is carrying him here. I think if you can late apex that and get all the way down to the curbing, you're going to have an amazing run. The Hawken just jammed the car in there before he could make it stick. So that didn't really work out, I think, like he planned it. Battles behind him. Here's Fike on the inside of Clough. That's for 17. Spot jump over the curb for the red 09. Not done yet. Side by side here through turn 5. Up over Madness. Down into 6.
Still's got the nose there, but we've seen this outside. If you can stay door handle to door handle around the outside, it eventually works, and yes, it does. Elijah Clough goes through. George Fike, the attack didn't quite work. Matthew Cridlin and Brian Sohn, a number of cars still in this fight. Ooh, that's an interesting lunge. The 3 of Sohn tries it going into Thunder Valley, and it doesn't pay off. Now he's going to get freight trained by Ismael Basso.
Yeah, cost him there a little bit. Basso's going to lift, and Max Baumann had to jump on the grinders as well to not run into the back of him. So a bit of concessions happening there, a little bit of brakes being cut. There are some deposits being made right now, and I bet you later there'll be some withdrawals. Onto the front straightaway, this time through lap 3, or make that 4 of approximately 14 and a half minutes to go. This time Del Campo hasn't gotten away, and it looks like the guys on back have become a little bit wiser. They're not going to battle amongst themselves until somebody dethrones Del Campo out of that top spot.
Yeah,
here we go.
They are not going to let that happen. This is the high side once again. Saxon's going to try to go the over-under. Maloney's going to leave him the space to do it. He's going to be able to close down to the apex nicely, and the 16 will get a heck of a run onto the back straightaway. Look at it, already pulling up to the back of the 15. And if you already are starting to pull alongside here, not alongside, but up to the back bumper here, once the draft kicks in, Del Campo might be a sitting duck this lap.
Yeah, and he's already gone defensive. He knows it. Saxon's going to get a really good run up alongside. Now, if he can stay driver's left through turn 4, he might have this race lead. Deep on the brakes into turn 4. He's alongside. Can he keep the nose in there? Del Campo shuts the door. No, he doesn't. Up the inside, Saxon. They touch. Saxon sideways over the crest. Quick hands, hangs onto it. Saxon, though, going to take the race lead away. That was a little aggressive, but he got it done.
Super aggressive, and both drivers absolutely on the limit. 1 car length and minus an inch that time. But everything is still ebbing and flowing behind. Maloney has an attack from Hawken. Hawken around the outside. This usually works. Coming into Thunder Valley, 99. Whoa. Still not clear of the rest of the field, and Maloney is hung out to dry, drops back to 4th.
We might have uncorked the chaos here. The front two leaning on each other, I think, has awakened the devil inside a lot of these drivers. They smell blood in the water with the weakness. Oh, car off the background. That's Mitchell Peak in the 56. Gathers it back up. Good save there.
Trying to see who might have hit him. I think I might have also just heard another rear ending or potentially an engine blown, but just contact in the background.
Yeah, just contact there, no engine, thankfully, but we've seen that happen. Downshift too quick, blow that motor, and it's easy to do here. Whoa, that's Kevin Zhu up the inside of Thomas Pressey. Just enough space, and Riley Thompson will take advantage of it on driver's left. That was a wild lap after starting off pretty calm.
Well, that's the pin we were talking about. Once you throw the grenade on a battle here at Mid-Ohio, it usually takes a lap to figure things out, but they're back to single file for the most part, other than the 11 of Gustavo Mercado trying to go getting an attack from the 45 of Alex Jensen, who picks up another spot.
So up front, though, with all this shuffling, Nathan Saxon has begun to pull out 0.5 of a second on Nick Del Campo in 2nd place. And it's Hawken who's shuffled himself back into 3rd, then Maloney and Steve Ficacci. So Ryan Maloney going the wrong direction here. Started this race in 2nd. He's dropped 2 spots. Hawken picks up 1. And Steve Ficacci has gained 1 as well. He's holding off Chris Taylor and others.
No note from race control about any contact at the front, so I think that one is clear. That door-to-door, certainly a racing incident, but a number of other warnings being distributed throughout the field. So a couple of drivers have eyes on them from race control, and you got to keep that in consideration because this isn't like a normal iRacing race. This is real live stewards following the action, and your actions have a lot more consequences here tonight.
Yeah, and again, leaning on each other in general is definitely not encouraged and definitely frowned upon. But if you're going to hit each other, door to door, I think is a lot more fair than nose to tail or quarter panel to quarter panel. So they might let them get away with that one. Everyone did a great job to hang on to it. They say Robbins racing, maybe not so much in road racing per se, but I'd say Saxon Del Campo handled that pretty well, considering we haven't had a lead change yet tonight. That was uncharted territory here.
Yeah, big time. And that was kind of what we talked about earlier, too, as Ficacci goes deep into the dirt. Del Campo didn't have any experience going side-by-side with people through any of these corners. The rest of them did, so Saxon used his experience from race 1 to know that the outside could work, keep his nose there, and I think Del Campo didn't quite realize how much room was going to be on his left for that lane to Saxon to use it.
So Nick Del Campo did close up a little bit that time. It was about a 0.5 of a second, a 0.5 of a second that he gained. And now look at the run he's building. So I think he's starting to figure out how to exit the keyhole to get this run, because let's remember that Nick Del Campo started this race up front. He didn't go anywhere. Oh, look at this run up the inside, up to turn 5. Oh, that was a little naughty. He's going to tap the back of the 16, send him out of line. That was a late dive for me, Tom.
That was a very late dive. He might have thought that's exactly what Saxon did, tried it back, but Saxon had way more room to make that move work, and now Del Campo gets the door slammed on him, but that's brought Hawken Maloney back into this one. The 4 cars have a little bit of a gap to the rest of the field, but Del Campo gets turned across Maloney's nose. No, Hawkins' nose.
Yeah, Hawken was the guy that shuffled him back. Del Campo drops down. It's going to be disastrous for race number 2. All those positions he had worked for in qualifying gone in a flash. Let's go back and have a look at how that happened. He was coming up over the crest here. And the 99, he gets into the back, kind of check. Oh, there was no contact. He just lost it.
Yeah, did it on his own. And that's reminiscent of the carousel on lap number 1. Del Campo was loose there as well. Almost looped it on the first lap. And finally, maybe missed the downshift. It's still odd to me to lose the back end like that, but self-induced, very unfortunate.
And look what that did to Nathan Saxon. Happy birthday, number 16, because he's gotten a 1.1 second lead, excuse me. Brennan Hawkins going to have to do a lot of work to run that back down. We did not see anybody do this in the first race. My point about Nick Del Campo was he hadn't gotten past all night long. He didn't know how to run anybody down. He didn't know, he hadn't figured out where to pass people yet because he had spent all his night leading. So as soon as he got put in second, he was struggling to figure out how to make that work and ultimately fell down the order. But Saxon, looking in the mirror, he sees cars real small as he heads down the back straight here.
Exactly, and now Nathan Saxon has the lead that when we saw Del Campo break out by over a second, the field couldn't run him down. They decided to fight amongst themselves. Now Saxon has that lead, 1.03 seconds there on the left side of your screen, but Hawken is trying to make it come back. Now 8/10. I don't know, with 7 laps to go, it's going to be tough, but they're going to have to agree no fighting until the white flag, really, to catch him.
It's going to take a lot of effort to convince everybody to do that because Ryan Maloney and Ficacci, they might know that even if they get there, the only driver that's realistically going to have a shot will be Brennan Hawkins. So they might be selfishly looking as you see the...
Del Campo is off again, makes a similar mistake, doesn't lose the car, but runs wide and loses 2 more positions. He's almost outside of the top 10 now.
This is not going the right direction. Now remember that we run 2 races a night, so basically the average of how you finish determines how good of a night you had. And if Del Campo finishes here, his average would be 5th. Nathan Saxon's going to walk out here with way more points. Same thing with Brennan Hawken and Ryan Maloney. This is basically erasing everything that Del Campo did in the first race of the night.
And he had a pretty forgettable race, round 1 at Road America. Didn't really set the barn on fire at Sonoma either, so he needed to have that sweep tonight to make his championship come back to life. I think this might be a little bit of the nail in coffin.
Setting the barn on fire a good thing?
I don't know. What's he saying?
I don't know. Set the world on fire? I don't understand why that's ever been considered a good thing.
A barn burner of a night.
He didn't set the world on fire. Well, that's a good thing. I don't know. It's one of those weird old-timer sayings. Down the back straight, 7/10. Hawkins gaining here, Tom. Gained 2/10 last time by.
He did.
That's enough.
He's within drafting distance. He's got 6 laps to go, right? So that'll be enough time, theoretically. He can mathematically catch him, but he's only maybe going to have 1 lap to do it by the time he gets there. Well, actually, I don't know. He's coming quicker than I thought.
Yeah, he is coming quicker than I thought. 7/10 of a second back. Look at Del Campo. Don't get yourself a penalty here, bud. You're driving through the mist. The 56 car is going to get tagged and turned around.
A little bit of a hip check. I'm not sure if there was grass involved on the left side of the 56. We'll take another look, but side by side ahead, this is Mitchell Peak and the 92 of Carter Kundinger. Yeah, Del Campo tries to follow up the inside.
Yeah, that was, he sort of forced him off, and then he caught the grass, and that was it. Del Campo is frustrated right now. You can tell in the language of the car and how he's driving it, but that's it for Mitchell Peak. He ends his day 28th. Out front, Hawkins have that gap. It's 0.5 of a second, and he's going to have plenty of time to get there if he keeps catching him at this rate. Hawkins quicker than Saxon. I think we're seeing that now.
And Hawken is just, he's so good at applying race 1 to race 2. We've seen him do so well. Almost won at Road America before a penalty influenced the results of that one. He won at race 2 at Sonoma. He had a really good race 1 back at round 2, but I think he's just doing a really good job of learning in race 1 and applying it to race 2, not only with decision making, but also just raw speed, because he's clearly the fastest car on track right now.
Yeah, again, he does not look like a rookie in any sense of the word. And we also see him in another esports championship he's running, and he was successful there as well. So he's talented across all cars here in the iRacing service, but this is so competitive. We're seeing that already. Saxon's lead is down to basically nothing at this point. 4/10. It's draft time again. So he was not able to outrun the field like Del Campo was able to in the first race of the night. Next time by, 4 laps to go. And it's a battle for the lead. 3 cars now. Saxon, Hawken, Maloney.
Look at the line choices, differentiating between the transition to turn 4 and 5 across the top 3 cars. None of them are on the same line between those 2 corners, and that's what I love about Mid-Ohio. You can make decisions like that, and a lot of times they kind of come out net even, but you got to consider the racing consequences of that. Right there, Nathan Saxon would have been able to be passed pretty easily by Hawken if he was already in position to do so, but now, like you said, years makes no difference. This is a battle for first.
Ryan Maloney just licking his chops, hoping these 2 tangle. I think what we're also starting to see is drivers getting a little bit more desperate, especially in the crossover between turns 4 and 5. They see that hole open when the lead driver tracks to the right to arc into turn 5. They see that door open and they go for it. And that's a dangerous place to put yourself. You can pick up a penalty, crash yourself, crash the other guy, but third place likes that move. He wants to see those guys tangle. Through turn 1, 4 laps to go now, lap 10 of 13. And look at the run Hawkins building here now. It all comes down to the keyhole. If he can build that run and take it all the way down to the entrance at turn 4, he can lunge on the brakes a little deeper than Saxon and make this pass. Keeps it a little tighter than I thought he was going to. I thought he'd go wider, but he's got Maloney there, and I don't know if Maloney's willing to play with him, so I think he's got to be cautious.
Yeah, I agree. Saxon really opened the corner up the way I thought Hawken might try to, and Hawken pinched the entry, but he knows he's got the draft to keep it closer, so perhaps the inside line down into the keyhole is faster, and if you have the draft to salvage it, you can end up with a faster overall lap time. Now watch the differences in lines again. You see Saxon's going to be a little bit more middle of the road. This time closes the door a bit, but still Hawken is the only driver chucking the car through turn 4 all the way to the grass, and that's going to give him, like you said, that tempting opportunity to put your nose in on somebody there at the apex of turn 5.
Yeah, it's last lap, almost anything goes, but the penalties will still be assigned on the last lap. So you might, in the moment, say, yeah, it's last lap, I can do that now. But the steward is gonna tell you no after you make contact. So you have to be cautious. And remember that Brandon Hawken got essentially a win taken away at Road America for having contact with Paul Darling on the final lap. So it has happened. It's not unprecedented in this series to have done something on the last lap that you think at the moment is a good decision, and then it ends up burning you more than if you had just conceded the spot. But race car drivers don't like to concede here, Tom. 3 laps to go.
And that's that championship mentality. So far there's a number of drivers that haven't really slipped up so far in the championship. It's just Nathan Saxon and Ryan Maloney. They are still pretty much not slipped up through the rest of the season, or for the season right now. Speaking of race control, though, unfortunately Nick Del Campo did pick up a penalty for that incident, the 15 car, and then we have about a half a dozen other warnings for contact out about the field. It's not really worth rattling off all the numbers, but
I was going to say, what were you saying about race 2 being the wilder one?
This has been a little bit more of a wilder one, as we expect.
Oh, man. There's Riley Thompson up to 12th on Alex Jensen. Didn't see the progress, or actually working over Kevin Zhu, I should say, in the 43. I didn't see the progress out of this 58 I thought I'd see in this race, but progress up front. Hawken looking out, drivers right. Maloney is here as well to play in party into turn 4 and 5 again. Let's watch their lines again here, Tom. This is where they all seem to differ.
Kind of coming together a bit, but also interesting to see Maloney poke out like that. That's communicating to Hawken in front of him. Maloney is in the back of this train. He's indicating that he's not exactly going to work with Hawken if he gets the opportunity. When you poke a nose like that, you're basically telling the guy, if I can, I'm going to go. So Ryan Maloney is feeling racy here in 3rd as well. All 3 of these drivers, they're running out of time, but Maloney needs the most time because he's got the furthest to go. Actually,
this time through here should be white flag lap. It will be. So next time by will be the final lap of racing here at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Nathan Saxon, Brandon Hawken, Ryan Maloney, 1, 2, 3. Here we go. 2.25 miles left to sort this out here. Tom, pick me a winner. Who wins this thing?
I don't know. With 1 lap to go, I think mathematically Ryan Maloney needs a miracle. So it's between Saxon and Hawken. We've seen it kind of work for both drivers, and it is all down to how Saxon protects. I think he's been doing a really good job in the keyhole to protect both the keyhole and the back straightaway, but this will be the telling moment right here. We're coming to the braking zone.
Driving up to the keyhole, Brandon Hawken. Does he have enough of a gap on Ryan Maloney to try something? Not really. So if he big, huge dive into the keyhole, way late on the brakes. He pulls alongside Saxon. They slam doors at the exit at turn 2, and somehow Hawken almost completed that. Where did he come from?
I don't know, but again, Saxon was doing the correct thing by opening that corner up. He needed a run down the back straightaway, and now he got it. The problem is now Maloney has a run on Hawken, and they probably will end up racing for 2nd. They're going to go side by side down the braking zone into China Beach.
Yeah, this is pretty much game over if they continue to be side by side after this, but Hawken's way late on the brakes again. Going to cover the spot. Look at this slide across the nose of the 65. That's defense and offense at the same time. Nicely done. Maloney gives him a shove from behind, but Saxon is pulling away. It's a car length now as we head into turn 6. Over the crest. It's pretty much out of time for Brandon Hawken unless Saxon makes a mistake. Car length between them as they come over the crest into Thunder Valley here and run up to turn number 11. But Nathan Saxon came in as the points leader, and he is bound determined to walk out as the points leader at the halfway point in the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. One more corner. Hawken within inches, but not close enough. Nathan Saxon continues his list of wins. This time at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, he wins at Mid-Ohio. Hawken, Maloney, 2nd and 3rd. Fakachi, Taylor, the rest of the top 5. Final corner behind them. Henn, Bachmeyer, Kundinger, Bressi, and Zhu, the rest of the top 10. Then Thompson in 11th, just misses it. Jensen, Profeta, 12th and 13th. But up front, Nathan Saxton continues to rattle off wins and be there when it counts.
It's an impressive performance, and that means right now in the championship, he'd be dropping a 5th place finish and a 3rd place finish. That's how good his season has been, is he would be getting rid of a podium when we erase some of these points rounds. So far, Summit Points, the only round he has not won at least one race at, and will extend his points lead over Ryan Maloney. Brandon Hawken in 3rd in the championship might actually, well, he'll pull pretty close up to Ryan Maloney, but all 3 of those drivers have just been so consistent and so good. This thing got us on the edge of our seats halfway through.
It really does. So Saxton, Hawken, and Maloney. Thinking back to Nathan Saxton's first race, again, if you came into this race and I thought Nick Dcunha was going to walk away just crushing everybody a second time, but he made a huge mistake into turn 9 and put himself way back. So Nathan Saxton's going to walk out of here making the most points of anybody. Then Hawken, Maloney, Ficacci, Taylor, the rest of the top 5 here, Tom, and we'll shift on down. Drivers that just missed out, Riley Thompson 11th, almost cracked the top 10 here tonight, but Nick Dcunha 17th. Not the night he was looking at having after it started off so strong with a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And back on the first page, just a shout out to Carter Kundinger, 12th to 8th in that race. That's a heck of a charge. But you're right. It's really tough when you get off your rhythm like that and you just don't have the experience that the other drivers did on the night. We kind of called it, or at least alluded to it going in. If Nick Dcunha had to race with somebody, would he have the experience to know where to place the car? And it turned out he may not have.
Looking on down for the rest of the order here, Brian Chabelski in 21st, Benson Tai in 23rd, Jack Sanchez ended up 27th, and Paul Darling didn't make race number 2. Strong start to the season in pace, but Tom, the consistency isn't there. He will not be the champion at the end of the season.
No, and he actually pulled out after that incident in race 1. He was waffling coming into tonight saying, I'm out of the championship already. With those 2 drops, now that he's got 3, I don't even know that we'll see the 55 back, unfortunately. But hopefully he continues to at least circulate and make things interesting for us here at the booth.
Absolutely. So Paul Darling, disappointing night, but a great night for Nathan Saxton. Brings home yet another victory. We'll walk out of here. Not with maximum points, Nathan. Race number 1 didn't go quite the way you were hoping it would, but race number 2 sure did. In the closing moments, the drivers behind you fought, and you ended up coming out on top and putting another W in the wins column. Take us through your night and what you saw at the windshield and the mirror.
Race 1, I mean, I'm sure we put on quite a show there. That was awesome. We let Nick get away. He was definitely quick in that race. I knew it was going to be an uphill battle when I got passed off the start, but race 2, they just stayed in my draft range, and then Brandon on the last lap, he should have waited. That you can't really do anything up the inside there because you lose all your momentum. So thankfully he went for the move, but yeah, it was a pretty tense night of racing.
Yeah, so 3rd and 1st is a really solid night. Looking at the points picture, though, Nick Dcunha looked like he was going to make up a whole bunch of ground tonight. Is there anybody, or is it Dcunha, is it Hawken, or is it Maloney that are you most concerned about heading into the second half of the season to potentially start dethroning you on the podium here and bring a threat to you at the top of the points?
Well, it seems like Brandon is always on the pace. Nick's the last couple weeks has definitely picked it up, but it seems like Ryan's always in there, and I mean, he's the one staying the closest to me in points, and I think he's the one to look out for, at least for the season. Brandon is definitely the fastest pace-wise out of those guys, I think.
Well, Nathan, congratulations. Another victory in the column and 2 podiums on the night. We'll see you in 2 weeks at Sebring. Best of luck to you there.
Yeah.
Move on now to Nick Dcunha, the race 1 winner. Race number 2, it was a 17th. Not the way you wanted things to go, Nick, but the pace was definitely there. Fastest car on the racetrack in race 1. You just drove away, and in race 2, looked like the same was going to happen, but then everything went wrong. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, race 1, I knew once I could kind of control the race with the tire degradation, I knew I had a little better chance at it. And then once I seen them fighting, I just tried to lay down Q laps. But race 2, look, you can't win them all. And I made a mistake, and then made another mistake, and you got to take those mistakes on the chin. Nobody to look at but myself, and just got to get a little better on them, clean the mistakes up. I have a ton of respect for Nathan, and he ran me, very, very clean, very hard. I returned the favor a little bit, so good racing, but nothing but respect for this league, though. I love coming here. I mean, this is just so much fun, so much competition. Everybody, you guys, the broadcast, I know I keep saying it, but it really is an unbelievable league.
Well, a win and a 17th. Maybe race 2 didn't go the way you wanted, Nick, but we've got more races coming up at Sebring in 2 weeks. Best of luck to you out there on the bumpy concrete. See if you can rattle up another victory.
Yeah, we'll try. I like Sebring. I want to give a shout out to Lemons of Love. If you guys have not, go to their, website. They raffle off a Global MX-5 Cup car. Great cause. Buy raffle tickets because that's pretty cool winning if you win that car. So thank you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. And we're going to move on now to, let's bring in Brandon Hawken, who was runner-up a couple times tonight. 4th in race 1, 2nd in race 2. Brandon, not quite victories, but you were there the whole time. What'd you need to do different to get those things, to get the medals a little shinier next time?
Hey Kyle, yeah, for the first race I definitely learned a lot. Do not activate the ABS because after I did that once I just could not turn for like a lap and a half afterwards. But yeah, I should have probably just been a little bit easier on the brakes. And yeah, like I thought I was maybe a little bit faster than Nick there in the first race. So I thought like after that move around the outside didn't work, I thought it and then after Nathan got the inside of me there, I thought I'd just try to fight off Nathan and then catch back up to Nick, but I messed up right after that. So yeah, I kind of dropped us all back, but that was a great win by Nick in race 1, and in race 2, yeah, it was just like I felt like I was driving better. I just didn't quite have enough time to get up to Nathan, to make a couple moves on him. I had time to get up to him there on the last lap, but nothing else. So I probably next time I probably would have stayed behind him going into turn 2, and instead of trying to dive it in there, I was trying to prevent him from getting a run on the exit, but it ended up just hurting my run. So because I couldn't get it quite turned down as well as they could there. So yeah. I tried, and yeah, well, man, it was just such great racing all around, and yeah, I'm not too pretty happy with 2nd and 4th. So yeah, we'll see how we can do next time.
Great night in the points, Brandon. Congratulations. Best of luck to you at Sebring in 2 weeks. We'll see if you can dominate there on the concrete. And finally, last but certainly not least, will be Ryan Maloney, who finished 3rd in race number 2, but 2nd in race 1. Just shy of victory tonight, Ryan. Getting better and better every week, but it got a little messy there towards the end of race 2. Take us through your battles up at the front, and what can you do next time to make sure that you're standing on top of the podium instead of on tiers 2 and 3?
Yeah, I mean, everybody up there is just really fast. It was very tough to pass here, and especially me at the end being 3rd car in line. It was kind of like if 2nd didn't mess up a little bit, then there was kind of not much you could do unless you really just threw it in there on them. But yeah, it was good fun racing.
Ryan, congratulations. 2 podiums tonight, and Sebring coming up next. Your thoughts on the flat track out there, 3.5 miles. It'll be a little draftier. Is that something you look forward to, or is that you like the twistier, tougher stuff like this?
I really like Mid-Ohio, but I think a little bit of a switch of pace going to Sebring and open up some more passing zones. I think that's going to be good for everybody.
All right, Ryan Maloney, 2nd and 3rd tonight. Congrats. We'll see you at Sebring.
Yep, thanks for having me.
We'll wrap things up here for SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge round number 4 from Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Tom, always fun to come to Mid-Ohio, your home track. I visited my first time last year. Really enjoyed it, but it always puts on solid racing. And what we saw tonight, especially at the front, were some pretty intense battles. Especially at the front, we didn't have a whole lot of mid-pack action, but at Sebring in 2 weeks, it's going to be chaos everywhere.
It's going to be back to many straightaways, lots of drafting, maybe a little more reminiscent of Road America. The drivers that succeeded at Road America were not all that different. Nathan Saxon won both. Ryan Maloney, a 2nd and a 3rd. I think we're really starting to see who the factors are, and it's just adaptability. Who learns what week to week.
Adaptability and domination for the drivers up at the front. Our top 5 have really come into their own here at the midpoint in the season. We look forward to seeing you again here on Winding Road Magazine 2 weeks from now at Sebring International in Sebring, Florida. I'm Kyle Heyer with Tom O'Borman. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time for SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge, round number 5.